What's going on, everybody? My name's Trey, and today we are bringing you three players that we want to buy in Dynasty Fantasy Football right before the season starts. We only have a couple weeks left to do it, so let's hop right into it. Who else is ready for Dynasty Fantasy Football? Just fantasy football in general. I'm ready to rock. First guy up that we want to buy is Mr. Tucker Kraft. So why would we want to buy Tucker Kraft? First of all, let's look at his value. So on the right side of the screen, you can see is the keep trade cut values, and on the left side is the Flock Fantasy values. So on Flock Fantasy, he's going as tight end six, just right behind Harold Fannin, and on Keep Trade Cut, he's going as a tight end five. Me personally, I think Tucker Kraft was an absolute stud last year. So let's just hop straight into looking at his numbers. Okay, so on the bottom right corner, you can see his game log or his career log, sorry, from year by year. And then up just above that is when you can see his game log from last year. So looking at his year by year log first, we can see he's steadily increasing his involvement throughout each year, including funny enough, increasing by roughly 5 points per game every year. So that means he's definitely going to 19 points per game, right? No, I'm just kidding. That would be awesome, but can't go that high. We'll be conservative in our thoughts. But you can see last year he was tight end four in a point per game basis last year. And that's only in an 8 game sample size. And so let's look at his game by game. We can see already he had two tight end one finishes just last year in those 4 games. Now, I think that's pretty significant. If you look at those points too, he scored 33 points and 24 points. Sometimes those are going to win you your weeks, especially with your tight end and how volatile the tight end position is. That could win you your week in fantasy. And I think in Dynasty, he's strictly just going too low. Like you can see on Fly Fantasy, he's going tight end set. He's number 73 overall around the guys like Bucky Irving, Marvin Harrison. Like I would much rather take the tight end spot. As much as I'm not a big believer in we want the strong tight end in Dynasty. I think especially over Bucky Irving, like give me Tucker Kraft. I guess straight up one for one against Harold Fannin. Harold Fannin, I know is 3 years younger, but I would rather the guy that we know is in a better offense and is going to get utilized a lot more. I think although they're unproven, I think Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston is going to be a lot harder of competition than what Christian Watson and Jaden Reed are going to be this year. So let's move along next. You can see what is the biggest thing changing about the Green Bay Packers offense this year is he lost his main target competition, Romeo Doubs. That was the biggest guy. He also lost Dontavian Wicks, which is a nice little extra side piece that we lose out on. And do you guys know who they added into this offense? They added Mr. Alpha wide receiver Sky Moore. No, Sky Moore is the only wide receiver they brought in. He's not taking any of this volume. We had 85 vacated targets from Romeo Doubs and 46 vacated targets from Dontavian Wicks. I think some of them will go to Christian Watson, some of them will go to Jaden Reed, but I think a majority of those will rotate over to Tucker Kraft. And the other big thing about this is that the Green Bay Packers, primarily when they get down to the red zone, they like to run the ball. They like to give it to Josh Jacobs. I get that. But when they're throwing the ball last year, they were throwing it to Romeo Doubs. He had 18 red zone targets, which was the most on this team. Tucker Kraft was in second with 12. By the way, when he only played 8 games in the year. So now who are they going to target more in the red zone? When they're not running the ball, they're going to be throwing it to Tucker Kraft. And I'm a very firm believer in that. 6 touchdowns Romeo was able to convert on those last year. I think Tucker Kraft is able to convert on a little bit more of those. He can be a better possession catcher than Romeo Doubs. I think Tucker Kraft would be a nice value in your dynasty league and at least give you a nice little value in. At least, his value's lower because of the injury. Once people see that he's back and he's actually going full speed and he's just finishing as a normal top 10, not top 12 tight end every week, his value is naturally going to increase just because he's coming back from that injury, which is where I think it's a nice little opportunity, a nice little buy window to go get in on his value and increase in value, get a little value in. Now let's move on to the next guy. This guy is the one that I really am passionate about here, Mr. RJ Harvey. So first off, Mr. RJ Harvey, he's not a guy that I really believed in as a prospect coming out of school last year. But he was drafted early. He was drafted in the second round by Sean Payton offense, which we know has been proved to be very, very profitable in the past with big names like Alvin Kamara coming as a later pick. RJ Harvey has the draft capital. And let's take a look at his value for this year. So right now he's sitting at number 127 overall on Keep Trade Cut at the running back 29. And over on Flock Fantasy is number at 139. So he's roughly about the same spot. But take a look at these guys he's going around. He's going around guys like Kyle Monangai, which they're pretty similar, I would say, except I would say Kyle Monangai is more of the running back rather than a receiving back, such as RJ Harvey. And they're going in offenses that are pretty comparable, but I think RJ Harvey's situation is better than what the Chicago Bears are offering for Kyle Monangai, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And same thing if we look at the Flock Fantasy guys who he's going around. Josh Downs, it's a shame. I liked Josh Downs a lot. I have him on my keeper team, but with the bringing in Keenan Allen and Alec Pierce coming back from injury, I don't think it's going to be in the cards for Josh Downs as much this year anymore. Eli Stowers, Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is a guy that I think is like he's pretty much done at this point, unless you get crazy blow up year from him, from Rice being hurt and all that. Like, give me the guy like RJ Harvey. So let's get into why specifically we want RJ Harvey, right? So we know his situation, right? He's sharing the backfield with J.K. Dobbins, and they newly acquired Jonah Coleman, which they brought in the draft this year. So of note, Jonah Coleman was drafted in, I think, the fourth round, and that's not super high draft capital. They obviously have a higher investment in RJ Harvey, first of all, which is nice to know. And then J.K. Dobbins obviously led the backfield last year before he got hurt. So what's the story with J.K. Dobbins? They brought him back on a 1 year deal, on a pretty cheap deal nonetheless. And as you can see by his game log there shown underneath of him, he hasn't played a full season, a full 16 or 17 games in his entire career in the NFL. So he got really close to it in his rookie year. He played 15 games as the young blood, fresh up from college. After that, he hasn't even been anywhere close. And now, again, it's a shame. He's a really great player. He's a really hard runner. He's a guy that you like to watch play football, but he just cannot stay healthy, and it's really unfortunate. So who's to say that he's going to stay healthy for all 17 of these games this year? I personally don't believe he's going to stay healthy for all these games this year. And you heard us talk about him in our video the other day. We like, as cash counter, we love J.K. Dobbins this year. We think he's going to be great. However, I know that you're going to want to get a few good games out of him and sell him off in your redraft league right away as you can, because he's not staying healthy all year long. It's a shame. Okay, so what else is good about RJ Harvey? So we know this is a great situation going into, first of all, the Denver Broncos, as you can see here, have the number one rated offensive line as per PFF. So obviously that'd be great. They're going to open up a lot of holes. They're going to give Bo Nix time to throw and hopefully check down to RJ Harvey as much as he can. And then what are some other stats? Plays per game in 2025. They ran the seventh most offensive plays at 64.1 plays per game. This is a really big predictor of fantasy point scoring. A lot more opportunities for your players when your offense is running a lot more plays. And we obviously keep in Sean Payton, and we don't have many major changes other than bringing in Jalen Waddle this year, which should hopefully lighten up the box and make it easier for RJ Harvey to get out of the backfield and get those more touches right away. So now that we have those plays per game, the other thing is points allowed per game, fourth least in the league at 18.5. This defense is very, very stout, and they also don't have a ton of changes. This is a team pretty much running it back a little bit, and this defense should be very good again. They're listed as a consensus top five at least on pretty much all platforms, usually up in the top three section. So as long as the defense is good, they're getting a lot of four and outs. They're getting the offense back on the field to run more plays per game like we want. And as long as that's the case, RJ Harvey's going to be on the field for more of those games, for more of those plays. I don't see how you can't want RJ Harvey in this spot. And just a little cherry on top, let's take a look at his game log last year once J.K. Dobbins was hurt. He was getting nearly, let's say, roughly 65 to 70% of the snaps during these games, more like 65 to 50 or to 60% of the snaps during these games. And he finished as an RB1 in 4 of these weeks after RJ Harvey got work, after RJ Harvey got hurt, or after J.K. Dobbins got hurt. My apologies. Including a running back two finished in that first week that J.K. Dobbins was hurt. This guy has shown that he can handle the workload. Maybe not for the full season, but that's why they have Jonah Coleman now that can help spell him and give him that time to rest in between plays. But he's shown that he can actually handle this. Now, it might not have been the best efficiency in the world, but he's able to put up those points. That's all we want. We want the volume in fantasy football. And in case you don't believe me that I don't want to buy these guys, specifically RJ Harvey, let's take a look at a trade that I just made 2 days ago. I just got RJ Harvey in a fourth for a 2028 second and a third. Now, one big thing that I made sure was all these picks were in 2028 because I think 2027 is a pretty good class. I wanted to push it off to 2028. Second of all, this second round pick was one that I just acquired in my recent Trey McBride trade. It was the pick swap with the guy that got Trey McBride, and his team is going to be very good. So that second round pick should be hopefully the 11th or the 12th pick, is what I'm guessing. So we were able to get RJ Harvey for a late second in 2028, as well as a little swap of a third and a fourth, which again, I don't think is going to be too much. So on the Flock site, you can see he's going around the 26,201 and 26,202. So the 26 we know is a weaker class, so we've bumped that down to like in 2027 is going to be like a mid second. But in 2028, it would still probably be, I think I got a nice value on this. In 2028, it would probably be worth a mid second too. So I think we got a nice value on this, and I think this is very achievable in most leagues. I feel like a lot of guys are not really excited about RJ Harvey simply because they brought in Joe McCollum. He's the newfangled toy on the block that they're going to want to use over RJ Harvey. And they brought back J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins is only on 1 year deal. We're playing Dynasty. Next year is going to be right back to two-man running back. And I think RJ Harvey has that pass catching role locked up, which is the biggest thing, which is very, very important for our PPR leagues. Let's move over to the last guy on this video. This is a very cheap guy, Mr. Jalen Mcmillan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So on the left, you can see he's going as wide receiver 62 on Flock site. And on Keep Trade Cut, he's also going as wide receiver 62. Going around some very low down the rankings rookies, such as Cyrus Allen, Antonio Williams, um, Chris Bell, and I mean Dejon Stribling on Flock site. Full disclosure, I can understand if you'd rather go with Dejon Stribling, but all the other rookie receivers, I cannot understand how you would want them over Jalen McMillan. Let's jump into Jalen McMillan more. So here's his game logs from the last 2 years. Specifically, we highlighted on the top in 2024 his last 5 game stretch of the season where he completed that full breakout. Now, the full note is this was when Chris Godwin got injured, but we saw a top 9 finish immediately after Godwin got injured. And also, so this big thing was it was in the Liam Cohen offense, which you guys know I'm a big Liam Cohen believer. Sadly, he's not the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers anymore. However, I don't think that means this offense is going to be completely terrible. But Jalen McMillan, again, we had 5 weeks in a row of a top 24, which is a wide receiver 2 finish in fantasy football. The last 5 weeks of the year, very much so, doing very well for your team down the stretch in the playoffs in 2024. Jump ahead to 2025. He has a very gruesome injury, one where he was on quotes saying, I don't even know if I was able, I didn't even know if I was going to play football again. And so he is very inspirational that he was able to make it back from injury, and he was able to put up as one good week last year, ranked 10th overall in week 17. So we have seen it before. Last year, it obviously wasn't amazing, but coming off that gruesome injury, we didn't expect much. At least I didn't expect much. Um, but this is a guy I loved coming out of school in Washington back in 2024, and I thought he was a good receiver. And one more stat specifically about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that I want to bring up is that they run the 11 personnel rate at the second highest clip in the NFL at 68.73%. Now, for those of you who don't know, what is 11 personnel? So 11 personnel stands for one running back and one tight end on the field, which in turn would cause there to be 3 wide receivers on the field. And 3 wide receivers, why is that important? Because we have Emeka Egbuka as the wide receiver 1. We know that. We have Chris Godwin as the wide receiver 2. We know that. We just want Jalen McMillan to be that wide receiver 3, and that's all we need. If Jalen McMillan's on the field 69% of the time because he's a wide receiver 3, he should hopefully see decent value. Enough value to jump up from his wide receiver 62 price tag or number 180 overall price tag, in my opinion. So now the biggest thing is we have Mike Evans departing this offense, which last year, Mike Evans, Ibuka, and Godwin were the top 3 wide receivers for this team. So obviously McMillan didn't play much, obviously, besides his injury. So now Mike Evans is gone. They replace him with just Ted Hurst. And Ted Hurst is not a highly touted prospect. He's not anything crazy. The only thing that people love about him is that he's that big X-body receiver similar to Mike Evans. So I can see how you can spin that. But for me, I'm not a big believer in this offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. However, I think you could figure out that I'd rather use the guy that I know is proven rather than a guy that's just, I've seen this before in Jalen McMillan and he can play rather than I'm just going to throw Ted Hurst out or on rookie unless he's completely wowing in fantasy in in the preseason here. So me personally, I'm trying to buy Jalen McMillan, and you can get him as prices as low as on Flock. It says the 2026 209. So again, 2026 is a worse class, is a not as good class as usual. So if we go price it out to 2027, you can get him for a third round pick, I think. So I think if you have the chance to send a third round pick in any draft class to go get Jalen McMillan, I think it's worth the shot. Because I think, especially, Emeka Egbuka is already dealing with his injury. He's in question for week one. Chris Godwin's 30 years old, and he could very well get injured at any point. If either one of those guys go down and Jalen McMillan instantly pops up into the running back or wide receiver two, I think we could see a massive jump in his volume, and I think it's worth taking the risk. The other thing to note is that Kate Otten is like a very, average to below average tight end. I don't think he's very anything amazing. And I do think that bringing Kenneth Gainwell is a good thing for this offense, but I don't think that he's not going to replace all of Mike Evans' uses. I think he's just going to cut into what Bucky does, and that's it. I think there's room with these vacated targets for Mike Evans that Jalen McMillan, even though he's not the same wide receiver archetype as him, could start to take into. Well, either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Those were the three guys that I think that you should be trying to buy in Dynasty Fantasy Football before the season starts. Once again, Tucker Kraft, RJ Harvey, Jalen McMillan. Go make it happen, guys. Let's buy these guys before the year. Let's get those value increases and let's win some games in Dynasty. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Thank you.